Little by little, I am uncovering aspects of the life of this young and great saint, Carlo Acutis. His love for the Eucharist and his work to spread Eucharistic miracles are well known, but there are parts of his life that are less familiar and very important. I have already spoken, for example, about chastity, the chastity of a teenager who died at 15 years old and received communion every day. This is something so important to highlight today, for adolescents, for young people, and of course for adults. I have also spoken about the compassion he felt toward those who suffered, toward the poor, understood in a broad sense. Today I want to continue with some anecdotes from his life that have been shared by his parents, especially his mother, Mrs. Antonia, in various interviews. She recounts that at 5.5 years old, still a child, on one occasion he gave all the money he had saved to a shelter for beggars run by Capuchins in Milan, telling the friar that it was for the poorest children. 5.5 years old. The Capuchin said that when Carlo died and it became known that he was in the process of beatification and later canonization, he talked about being deeply impressed by such a small child bringing an offering to help other children in need. Carlo's nanny, a Polish woman who was very important in his upbringing because he spent many hours with her, recalls that when they walked down the street, if he saw a poor person, he always wanted to approach and speak with them. He would buy lunch boxes, thermal containers with his own money, and then ask to have them filled with food or hot milk or coffee with milk, and request permission to take them, always accompanied by a household employee, to the homeless who spent the night in the park across the parish in Milan, where the family attended Mass on Sundays. He lived out what Saint Teresa of Calcutta said: to help those who suffer, you don't need to travel to distant places, because the poor near you are right next to your home. His mother also tells that once, during a vacation in Assisi, at the holiday retreat house they had bought on the outskirts of the city, Carlo discovered a homeless man sleeping in a public park. That day, he ate less dinner and always with his parents' permission, took the food to the man after dinner. From then on, he would reduce part of his own dinner and ask for a little more, so he could bring food to that man every day. On another occasion, while still in school, he learned of an elderly man with a severe disability and visited him regularly, bringing sweets and even part of his savings. Near that parish in Milan, in the park across the street, there was an 80-year-old homeless man with diabetes and heart problems. One day he fell seriously ill and had to be hospitalized. Carlo had been helping him while he slept on the street, and then visited him frequently in the hospital to continue supporting him. Another time, Carlo asked his parents for money to go, accompanied by a household employee, to a supermarket and make a large purchase for 2 Roma children he had met on the street. He also met a homeless woman named Josephine, who was suffering from severe depression and was letting herself die, sleeping on a park bench and refusing to get up. When other homeless people told Carlo about her, he used his family's influence to get Josephine admitted to a hospital, but it was Carlo himself who spoke with her and convinced her to accept help, because she only wanted to die due to her depression. Thanks to his family's resources, when Josephine recovered in the hospital, she was able to find a place to live in public housing for the homeless. His mother says that as a teenager, Carlo regularly served meals at the soup kitchen for the poor, run by the Missionaries of Charity in Milan. There he met some poor Muslims who came for food, and later, when he saw them on the street, he would run to greet them because they had become friends. One day, he learned that the parents of a Filipino friend who were in the Philippines at the time had been victims of a terrible typhoon that destroyed their home. Carlo gathered all his savings, asked his grandmother and parents for money, and rushed to give it to his friend, so he could help his family by sending it to the Philippines. His charity also extended to his schoolmates, especially new students who were less adapted, somewhat marginalized, or even victims of bullying. He helped them fit in, stayed with them so they wouldn't feel alone, and tried to prevent others from harming them. In all these things, and I have only given a few examples from the testimonies about him, Carlo always said that his role models were Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Anthony of Padua, and that he saw in them the example he wanted to follow, to help those who suffer, because just like them, in those who suffer he saw Christ. Saint Carlo Acutis, pray for us, so that we may become more like you in the love for the Lord and in service to the poor.